Welcome to Rugby Rundown, your ultimate weekly debrief on all the on-field drama and off-field intrigue from across the globe. I'm Gavin.
And I'm Adrian. We're absolutely thrilled to have you join us today as we dissect the crunching tackles, breathtaking tries, and those ever-present controversial calls shaping the world of rugby.
We've got a packed show for you today, diving deep into the British and Irish Lions' 2025 tour to Australia and the fascinating situation surrounding Scotland's concurrent Pacific engagements. It's a complex balance of national pride, individual ambition, and global rugby development that we can't wait to unpack.
From those crucial test selections and player performances to the profound impact of Tier 1 nations touring the Pacific, we'll track every hopeful and scrutinize the stories that are truly shaping the game. Let's get straight into it.
Adrian, let's kick things off with the British and Irish Lions. It's been a bit of a roller coaster start for them, hasn't it? That opening fixture against Argentina in Dublin was a real shocker.
Absolutely, Gavin. A 24-28 defeat to Argentina right out of the gate, their first tour opening loss since way back in 1971. It definitely raised a few eyebrows and sparked concerns about their cohesion and attacking fluency. It felt like a bit of a stumble right at the start.
It certainly did. But just 8 days later, what a turnaround. A much-changed Lions team absolutely dominated Western Force in Perth, pulling off a decisive 54-7 victory. That was a completely different beast, showcasing fluid, clinical rugby.
A massive statement win for sure. So the big question for Coach Andy Farrell now is, which performance truly reflects this team's identity? As they head towards that crucial first test against Joe Schmidt's Wallabies, he's got to figure out who's in and who's out, and that's incredibly complex.
And it's not just the Lions' internal performances complicating things. We've had the home nations, England, Ireland, Scotland, and Wales, all on their own summer tours concurrently. Players have been staking their claims for a test jersey from thousands of miles away. It's this tantalizing mix of clarity and confusion, showing both devastating attacking potential and those frustrating moments of imprecision. It makes for fascinating viewing, but a headache for the selectors. Speaking of selection headaches, let's talk about Scotland's impressive presence in this Lions squad. 8 Scottish players were initially named in that 38-man squad for the Australian tour, which is a fantastic showing.
It really is, Gavin. That initial contingent saw some familiar faces like Finn Russell, who's on his third Lions tour, and Duhan van der Merwe, making his second appearance after earning 3 test caps in 2021. Then we had the exciting first-timers, Glasgow Warriors centers Sione Tuipulotu and Hugh Jones, versatile fullback Blair Kinghorn, second-row Scott Cummings, loosehead prop Pierre Schoeman, and scrum half Ben White. A really strong Scottish flavor from the start.
And if that wasn't enough, the tour saw even more Scottish talent pulled into the mix. There were mid-tour call-ups, which is where things get really interesting, especially considering Scotland's own concurrent Pacific tour.
Exactly. 3 additional Scottish players were called up: Ewan Ashman, Darcy Graham, and Rory Sutherland. What's crucial to note is these players were literally extracted from Scotland's ongoing Pacific tour. Darcy Graham joined immediately, while Ashman and Sutherland were set to link up in Melbourne after Scotland's match against Samoa. Sutherland's even had previous Lions test experience, underscoring his proven capability. With these additions, the total Scottish representation on the Lions tour swelled to a significant 11 players.
So, with these 11 Scots now on tour, how have our Bravehearts actually performed in those crucial warm-up matches? The Lions have been formidable, going 5-0 after that initial pre-tour wobble against Argentina.
They certainly have, Gavin, and some of the Scottish contingent have really stood out. Duhan van der Merwe, for example, was absolutely phenomenal. Against the Australia-New Zealand combined side, he bagged a hat trick, with 2 of those tries coming in a blistering 13-minute burst during their 48-0 victory. His impact with the ball in hand was described as phenomenal.
Phenomenal indeed. But I heard there were still some questions being raised despite that try-scoring spree.
That's right. While his attacking prowess is undeniable, some expert commentary, like from Paul Williams, still highlighted his defensive work, kicking, and aerial skills as areas that might need improvement to truly secure a guaranteed test starting spot. It's a tough environment, even with 3 tries. Now, moving to the maestro, Finn Russell. He's reportedly undergone a major rugby rebrand, transforming into a very composed 10. His assured kicking and precise passing have been key attributes. He had a successful outing against the Brumbies, converting 4 tries and kicking a penalty goal, forming a really promising halves combination there.
He's a player who can pull something out of nothing, so that composure sounds like a great evolution. It sounds like the pundits are tipping him for big things in the Test series.
Absolutely. Widely anticipated for at least a test bench spot, if not a starting role. And then we have the Glasgow Warriors center pairing, Hugh Jones and Sione Tuipulotu, who've also had their opportunities to impress, particularly against that AUNZ combined side. There's even punditry suggesting Sione Tuipulotu should start at inside center at 12, potentially forming a strong partnership with Gary Ringrose, and Hugh Jones having an exceptional game when paired with Tuipulotu. Ronan O'Gara even predicted Hugh Jones in his first Test 15 at outside center.
That's exciting news for the Glasgow boys. On the flip side, we had a bit of bad luck with Blair Kinghorn.
Unfortunately, yes. Blair Kinghorn suffered a knee injury during the match against the Brumbies, which is a real blow, leaving Hugo Keenan as the sole fully fit specialist fullback in the squad after Elliot Daly's earlier injury. In the forwards, Pierre Schoeman started in the front row for the AUNZ combined side, and Scott Cummings was on the bench for the same fixture, with some pundits even pushing for his Test inclusion over others.
So, with all these performances, what's the overall picture for Test selection? Coach Andy Farrell's been pretty clear that places are still up for grabs, but is it really that open?
Farrell has maintained an open-minded stance, saying players can play themselves in and players can play themselves out. However, it's worth noting that the team for that final warm-up against the AUNZ combined side indicated that most of whom won't feature in the opening test. This suggests a strategic distinction, almost a two-tier system, between players used for tour matches and those truly in the test reckoning. Even a hat trick from Duhan van der Merwe in that game might not guarantee a test spot if his primary role was to help prepare the test team. It means the audition isn't always for a test spot, but rather for tour match duties.
Adrian, that brings us to a really critical point, doesn't it? The Lions tour is huge, but it also creates a massive dilemma, especially for nations like Scotland when their players get called up mid-tour.
Absolutely, Gavin. Those mid-tour call-ups for Darcy Graham, Ewan Ashman, and Rory Sutherland from Scotland's Pacific Tour to the Lions squad really highlight this tension. It shows their individual talent, no doubt, and the Lions' need for reinforcements. Rory Sutherland's past Lions experience speaks volumes about his proven quality.
And the logistics alone must be a nightmare. Graham left immediately while Ashman and Sutherland were slated to join after Scotland's match against Samoa. With 11 Scots now on the Lions tour in total, that's a massive draw on the national team's resources during their own international window.
It really is, and it makes you wonder for those Scottish players who were either initially in the Lions squad or called up, but ultimately didn't make that Test 15, like Scott Cummings or Pierre Schoeman, or even those like Graham, Ashman, and Sutherland who might not feature in the tests. Would they have gained more valuable experience by staying with the national team for the Pacific Tour?
It's a huge question, isn't it? While the Lions Tour offers incredible exposure and prestige, actual test match opportunities are so limited. Many might spend significant time training or playing less impactful tour matches.
Exactly. Conversely, staying with the Scotland squad would have guaranteed them significant game time against international opposition, allowing them to solidify their roles, build crucial team cohesion, and directly contribute to Scotland's national ranking and strategic objectives. Being a consistent starter and a leader in a full national campaign could offer more tangible developmental benefits than being a peripheral figure in a Lions Test week.
And we saw the direct impact of this on Scotland's tour. The match report for their game against Fiji noted that Scotland fielded one of the lightest starting 15 selected while Gregor Townsend has been in charge.
That's right, Gavin. That reduction in physical presence and experience certainly contributed to Scotland's subsequent 29-14 loss to Fiji. It highlights a fundamental conflict of interest, a zero-sum game for player availability. The Lions gain talent, but it directly undermines the competitive integrity and developmental objectives of the national team in that same international window.
That loss to Fiji, while disappointing for Scotland, actually brings us to a really powerful point, Adrian. It highlights just how much these tours mean to developing rugby nations.
It absolutely does, Gavin. A Fijian source put it so eloquently, saying, "Our neighbors, Australia and New Zealand, haven't come to play a test match in Fiji for the longest time. Scotland has come twice in the last 10 years. We owe a big gratitude to the Bravehearts for letting the Fiji rugby fans get a dose of international rugby." That really hits home, doesn't it?
It truly does. It shows the immense value placed on direct engagement from Tier 1 nations, especially when you consider Australia and New Zealand are geographically so much closer. And it's not just about the game itself, is it? We saw over 10,000 spectators at the HFC Bank Stadium for that match, which is a huge boost for the local economy.
Exactly. That immediate economic activity is vital, but the benefits extend so much further. These tours offer unrivaled grassroots coaching experience, helping to develop training structures and coaching practices with youth groups. It boosts energy, helps develop confidence, and builds knowledge for the next generation of community leaders.
And it's deeply cultural, too. We're talking about opportunities for cultural immersion, where international participants can live with local families and experience traditional Fijian life. It's more than just a sporting event, it's a cultural exchange.
And let's not forget the profound societal impact. Rugby in Fiji is deeply woven into the fabric of society. For many men, it's seen as a means of livelihood and a pathway to aspirational social and economic achievement, particularly for those living below the poverty line.
That's critical. The remittances from professional players are identified as a critical step towards income security for Fijian families, contributing significantly to household and community development. So, when Scotland tours, they're not just playing rugby. They're reinforcing a rugby dream that connects to social mobility and community resilience. It's truly inspiring. So, Adrian, while those tours are invaluable, we also have to acknowledge the systemic challenges that Pacific Rugby faces in its development. It's not all sunshine and remittances.
Absolutely, Gavin. One of the biggest hurdles is financial instability. There's a persistent lack of sponsorships, and overseas tours, while great for exposure, often yield low financial returns for smaller unions, making sustained international competition incredibly difficult. World Rugby has even expressed dissatisfaction with financial management in some Pacific unions, leading to strict monitoring.
And beyond the financial, there are cultural and lifestyle factors. Traditional practices like kava consumption and certain food choices can genuinely impact athlete fitness, sleep, and nutrition. There's a real need for greater self-discipline among young players to navigate these complexities for elite success.
That's a crucial point. Then there's the player retention issue. Fiji's coach, Mick Byrne, has raised concerns that some Super Rugby contracts in New Zealand might contain clauses requiring players to remain eligible for the All Blacks, effectively limiting their ability to represent their heritage nations. This really impacts national team strength.
It's a tricky balancing act, but it's not all bleak. There are significant initiatives underway. World Rugby, for instance, has revitalized the Pacific Nations Cup, aiming for more consistent competition and a clear qualification pathway for the 2027 Rugby World Cup.
And their support for the Fijian Drua and Moana Pacifica Super Rugby franchises has been huge, with initial funding of £1.2 million annually for 3 years. This provides a genuine professional pathway at home and allows national coaches year-round access to players. We've seen the Drua's success directly translate into national team selections, which is fantastic.
Australia is stepping up too, with a $14.2 million 4-year investment through their Australian Pacific Rugby Union partnership. This supports things like the Fijian Drua's continued participation, a new rugby academy, and women's sevens programs. It's a comprehensive approach.
And while New Zealand's rugby network offers great support for retired players, the concerns about contract clauses still loom. It highlights that despite significant financial injections, sustained development requires addressing those underlying systemic weaknesses in governance and player pathways.
So, Adrian, with all these challenges and initiatives, what are our recommendations for the future? How can Tier 1 nations and World Rugby really elevate Pacific Rugby sustainably?
Excellent question, Gavin. Firstly, building on Fiji's gratitude, Tier 1 nations simply need to commit to more regular and meaningful direct tours. It's not just about the game, it's about the economic stimulus, the inspiration, and the competitive exposure.
Absolutely. And for World Rugby, they need to conduct a thorough review of player eligibility and release policies. We need more equitable rules that ensure Pacific heritage players can represent their home nations without jeopardizing their club careers.
Exactly. And beyond just funding, there needs to be targeted coaching and administrative capacity building. Let's help Pacific unions improve their financial management and governance. Lastly, exploring innovative, long-term funding models, like a floating fund, could truly stabilize their financial future.
What a fascinating discussion, Adrian. It really boils down to this complex balance between the prestige of elite competition, like the Lions Tour, and the absolute imperative of global rugby development.
Couldn't agree more, Gavin. Supporting emerging nations, especially in the Pacific, isn't just a nice to have. It's crucial for the long-term health and growth of our sport. Thanks for tuning in to Rugby Rundown.
Until next time, we'll see you then.